It has been a long and windy road that has put Hondo where we are today. The facts that will be presented to you tonight deal with these ideas. The recall election was and is only about bad financial decisions. The majority of voters in the recall election are not being properly represented and are certainly not being vigorously defended by the attorney for the city of Hondo. That, in the absence of proper representation, the citizens of Hondo must continue to fight. Let's take a look at how this all started. On June 2, 2008, Chevelle Lopez, Lucio Torres, and Virginia Gonzalez were seated as Hondo City Council members. At this meeting, they tabled almost all agenda items and did not make arrangements for or attend standard new council training. At the next meeting, they fired Frank Garza and hired their own legal team without going out for bids or any discussion. This is significant because these attorneys play a crucial role in their future plans. Remember, Frank Garza was a city attorney who helped form the city charter and would be an expert on matters going forward. One of these attorneys, Mr. Rolando Rios, is hired as city prosecutor. Mr. Rios has a long history with Mr. Lopez, as heard here from the council meeting when Rios was hired.
And also, I feel that we need a new attorney. We need some fresh air here. And also, I want to say that I have known Mr. Rolando Rios for over 20 years. He represented me in also in 10 single-member districts here in Hondo for the Hondo Independent School District in 1987. And he's a very good attorney. In fact, he's here.
Mr. Torres and Ms. Gonzalez certainly know Mr. Rios as well. However, it was not to be, as Mr. Rios missed every single court date he was required to be at and finally turned in his resignation on September 3rd, 3 months after being hired. Now, on to the real start of bad financial decisions. First, the city had negotiated a new contract that would eliminate the ups and downs consumers were experiencing with their electric bills. Instead of having an extra charge added to everyone's bill whenever fuel prices went up, commonly called the fuel adjustment charge, the city had CPS Energy average out the fluctuations. This average was about 2 cents higher than what we were paying before, which the city agreed to as a new flat rate cost. This new flat rate would help everyone predict and budget their utility bills better. Lopez, Torres, and Gonzalez all agreed to accept the contract with CPS at the new flat rate, but did not raise the cost to consumers to match the increase in cost to the city. Next, they voted for the 2008-2009 budget that had a $1.3 million shortfall because of the loss of electric revenue. They instructed the city manager to cut the budget by $1.3 million to make it balance. Imagine this, if you would. The city manager, directors, and supervisors in the city are tasked with finding $1.3 million in cuts. On top of performing their normal duties, they are pulled into numerous meetings throughout a month. They are asked to find cuts without laying anyone off or messing with the newly budgeted wage increases. This was a very unproductive time for the city, as you can imagine. After a month of this, a new proposed budget with $1.1 million in very deep cuts is brought to council. Every department in the city and every service that depends on city monies stood up and pleaded with council not to cripple them. Apparently not what the council was looking for, they threw away the month's worth of work they had asked for and scheduled another budget workshop. As a compromise, the city manager offered a 1.5 cent increase to the majority, but it was denied. In 2007, the citizens of Hondo voted to borrow money for some much-needed projects. This was done through the issuance of certificates of obligation. These 2007 certificates of obligation, as they are referred to, was money borrowed for future projects. 2 projects, the expansion of City Hall and the police station, were now being offered by Councilman Torres to balance the budget. This was a total disregard for the will of the voters. Dan Martinez was retained as bond counsel to give his opinion on using funds borrowed and approved for a specific purpose, like these were. These funds would be used for something entirely different from what the voters had approved. He said that it would be fine. Incidentally, as another compromise, Councilman Gruber and Tomey offered a 1-cent increase to help balance the budget. It was denied without consideration. Mr. Martinez changed his mind. Now a resolution was needed by City Council to change the use of the 2007 Certificates of Obligations. Remember, this is a $1.2 million in borrowed money that the City of Hondo will be paying back for another 23 years, plus interest. Simply put, you as a voter will be paying on this debt for the next 23 years. Councilman Torres, author of the new budget, says, "We will worry about it next year." As a side deal, a half-cent increase in electric costs was voted in. This additional $450,000 was not to balance the budget, but instead to fund special projects of the council that were not included in the original budget. Not surprisingly, the assistant city manager now quits. Mrs. Butler will be sorely missed by the city, as she was instrumental in bringing in over $10 million in grants in her stay here. On the screen are a couple of things she handled for us. Councilman Sanchez remarked after her salary was reallocated that the library is a better use of funds than for someone who sits around in their office all day. On February 2nd, the recall petition is presented to Council and Councilman Lopez asks for a public hearing. City Attorney Melissa Killian puts in her resignation. At the public hearing, the soon-to-be recalled council members take credit for all of the hard work initiated by the city councils before them. Lopez tells everyone how he saved everyone $1.8 million. And
all the supporters, all the support that we have here that come out to support us, and like I said before, I'm not resigning. Moved to set the recall election for May 9th because it's going to fail, and we're the majority, and it's just going to fail. So it's going to be a waste of time on behalf of the recall instigators. But it's in the charter, the home rule charter, and because it's there, they're taking advantage of it. But bring on the recall because it's going to fail. All right.
Unfortunately, he may be right. The next day, at another workshop, Councilman Lopez tells everyone how impressed he is with Bobby Perez. Perez is voted in over McCamey Law Firm, who is later hired by the city to defend us in this lawsuit, as well as Davidson Trujillo, home of Frank Garza, our recently ousted city charter expert. By the February 17th City Council meeting, the brain on the recall attitude had obviously worn off. The Medina County Elections Department, formed for just such purposes, had been contracted to handle the upcoming election for the city and the school. However, Lopez and Torres did not like it. The motion to accept the contract was tabled, as well as the motion to order the May 9th election. This put the city into a very tight timeline. The agreed process to have the county hold the city election was denied. The city had already started the pre-clearance process, but this process included the county holding the election. That pre-clearance was pulled as a last-minute substitution to have the city hold the election was made by Lopez. The council members, who were the subject of a recall measure, completely controlled the date, place, and time of the election. This is just 5 days before the absolute drop-dead date of March 7th. This is significant because it takes around 60 days for pre-clearance from the Department of Justice. Our city staff was forced to put together a high-intensity election in just 5 days, one that was sure to be scrutinized and spotlighted. Ellen Stevens, who had agreed to serve as election judge, was replaced by Elva Miranda. Mrs. Miranda, at the urging of Virginia Gonzalez, called at 5:30 p.m. to the city secretary before the 6 p.m. city council meeting to say that she would be available.